you think about regulatory certainty, that's one thing that everyone is certainly hoped for, but then you have the volatility that is outside of that regulatory process, how you factor all that in, the impacts on investment and what that portends as well. I said that I was going to be coming back to you, Mr. Hecker and Mr. Kelleher, with the same question that I had directed to Mr. Moffett and Mr. Murchie about the dangers, the concerns if we are not looking outward when it comes to adequate infrastructure, if you'd both care to address that. We've hit on it through responses and other questions, but I want to give you that opportunity.
Certainly. I think we anticipate, and I'm viewing some studies that are coming out of NREL and the Brattle Group and others, the prospect of an enormous ramp up in electricity demand over the next quarter century. It's even predicted that electricity demand may double by 2050. It's something we need to prepare for, and the grid right now is not sufficiently integrated or strong to carry the additional generation that will be needed to serve that demand. What happens if we don't build this? Well, prices go up. Right now, the capital costs of building transmission are relatively low, and these are financed in capital markets. We don't know. There are some risks that down the road that it'll be more expensive to build the infrastructure we need. The benefits to consumers are not going to flow. The job creation benefits that come from building infrastructure will be delayed. I think there are lots of reasons to begin to move more proactively in planning the grid of the future. And there are lots of folks in the industry, in academe, looking at what that grid should look like and what kinds of resources should it be able to exploit, both as a matter of natural resources and technology. We think that in anticipating a more electrified American economy and a more integrated North American energy economy, that the time to act is now, to be more proactive. And I hope that message gets through to the FERC as well, which has struggled over the last 7 or 8 years to try and turn Order 1000 into a more productive exercise.
Mr. Kelleher.
It's an interesting question. I'd like to answer it as a sort of a counterfactual. What would things look like today if we hadn't made the large investments in infrastructure going back to, say, summer of 2005? Summer of 2005, the price of natural gas was $9. Now it's $3, sometimes lower. That didn't just happen. It happened because the natural gas supply basins changed. That production only could have made it to market with really large-scale investments into new gas pipelines. If we had a static pipeline network and we still saw the improvements in shale gas technology, prices would not be $3 now. They might be $6, they might be $7. I'm just sort of guessing at numbers. And we probably would have been thrilled, thinking, not knowing that they could have been $3, we'd have said, wow, the price of natural gas went from $9 to $7, that's fantastic. Because at the time, the expectation was $9 would be sort of in the medium. It might actually be higher than that. Now, if gas prices were $7 or $6, gas is the driver of electricity prices, wholesale electricity prices. Suddenly, a lot of uneconomic generation that has now retired or is poised to retire would be economic. So we would not have seen the changes in our electricity supply that have occurred in recent years. Natural gas would not be the #1 source of electricity supply. It would probably still be coal. We'd have a less flexible fleet. I think the short answer would be gas prices would not be $3. Electricity prices would not be where they are today. Everything would be 25 to 50% higher, and the economy would suffer as a consequence. So I think the infrastructure investments have made all of that possible. It would not have happened otherwise.
Appreciate that. Senator King mentioned in his opening statement the reference that sometimes we build the infrastructure out as if it's a church awaiting Easter Mass and Christmas, and that much of the time you have underutilized capacity there. This is the big problem that we face. And we're trying to find that right spot for where we are today, but also anticipating the needs of the future. So it's kind of the Goldilocks situation. Is it too big for where we are today? Is it too small, or is it just right? So very quickly, because my time has expired here, but use my Goldilocks analogy. Are we too big, too small, or just about right for today? And then 5 years from now, what do we look like? This is the rapid round. Mr. Moffett?
I think we are about right. I think the market forces that you see clearing prices and meeting supply needs is there.
What about 5 years?
5 years from now, I think it's going to be the same. I think that the residential, commercial, industrial uses are not going to change. There may be on the margin some change in how we generate electricity, but we're still using electricity. If we have major efficiency, then yeah, we may become obsolete. I don't think we'll be obsolete because of renewables.
Okay, Mr. Murkowski.
Yes, I generally agree with that, but Senator King's question before about stranded assets, I think, is an important one, because behind your question is this things we're building today going to be obsolete? Mm-hmm. Who is going to pay for that cost? And as Mr. Kelleher said, in the natural gas world, it's the investors. It would be my clients if we were to not allocate our capital accordingly. And so the issue is, we're never going to get this right. There will be mistakes made, and the question is who will pay the costs, and are those costs going to be borne by those people who are best able to, or who are responsible for those costs? So if there are regulatory changes that were unanticipated, then those costs could be borne by people who, sort of through no fault of their own, are now paying more for electricity and gas.
Our ratepayers.
I think investors are willing to take that risk, so long as that the reward is commensurate. And so we see enormous changes again on the electricity side, because Kurt's point about most of natural gas being used for things other than electricity, that doesn't move much. But when you talk about storage on the grid, one of the largest pieces of storage on the grid in the future will be batteries between four wheels. That will be part of the storage on the grid. They will charge at certain times of the day, and then will reduce the over the 24-hour cycle of electricity. So, if markets are designed properly, the risk will be borne by those who can best take them. And if you make a mistake as an investor, well, that's the system we're operating under.
Mr. Hecker, Mr. Kelleher, are we just about right now? Where are we going to be in 5 years?
Madam Chair, I think it's especially hard to make predictions, especially about the future, and we are eternally in that dilemma. But we, at least on the transmission side, and I try to make the case that transmission is a special case, because what it gives us is the ability to adapt to whether we have gas generation, more renewable generation, whether nuclear has a renaissance, the kinds of technologies that are coming along, storage, demand response, and so forth. The common thread, the tie that binds, is the adequacy of the grid. And if we begin to plan 5-year increments at a time without looking down the road at what these long-lived assets can do for our economy, we're going to miss some opportunities. And apropos of what Joe said earlier, we need to take reasonable risks, but I think where we're at is a pretty good spot. The lights are on today, And I think that, they'll be
Hopefully they're going to
inexpensive
be
to
on
turn on
tomorrow,
for a
too.
while.
There's so much for my lightning round. Mr. Gallagher, I got to give you your final here.
I think in terms of, I'll give you answer on the electric side and the pipeline side. On the pipeline side, I have great confidence that the investment level will continue to be right, really just because of the nature of how projects are developed. Pipelines are for-profit enterprises. They have large-scale, either national or regional networks. They see a market need or customer interest, and they really are very aggressive in pursuing it, typically in a competitive fashion. That dynamic won't change. That'll still be there 5 years from now. And they're looking for economic benefits. On the electric side, the focus on, at least the RTO transmission planning, is on reliability need, not economic benefit. So I think, I'm not trying to be qualified, but on the electric side, I think the investment will still be just about right to satisfy that floor, reliability needs. It won't necessarily be just right to satisfy resiliency, which is harder to quantify, and the planning doesn't really even focus on economic need. It focuses on reliability needs. So I think it'll be adequate for that. Will it be adequate for those higher purposes or greater level of investment? I'm not sure.
Thank you. Senator King.